Sonia Verma had always been the dependable friend, the one who said yes when others said no, the one who showed up, even when it wasn't convenient, and the one who quietly carried the emotional weight of everyone around her. She didn't mind. To her, friendship was a responsibility, a choice, and sometimes a sacrifice.
The CEO is ready for you.
That Saturday afternoon, she found herself rushing across a busy cafe in central Mumbai, her heels clicking on the polished floor, clutching a small bouquet of fresh flowers. Her best friend, Ria, had called in a panic. She couldn't make it to her blind date arranged by her aunt, a powerful social connector who had promised her a life-changing opportunity. Ria, of course, had begged Sonia to step in, reasoning that at least someone could go in her place and avoid offending the family's connections. Sonia hesitated for a split second. She had never been the type to date, at least not seriously. Blind dates made her uneasy, and the idea of pretending to be someone else seemed risky. But Ria's panicked voice and promises of eternal gratitude had worn her down. "Fine," Sonia had finally said. "I'll go, but only for an hour." And now, here she was, adjusting the hem of her simple but elegant dress, taking a deep breath and preparing to walk into a restaurant where she knew nothing about the man she was about to meet, except that he was supposedly the CEO of a company whose name carried weight in corporate circles. The restaurant was buzzing with activity, a mix of business lunches and weekend diners. She scanned the room, looking for the man who was allegedly expecting Ria. Her eyes landed on a tall figure seated at a corner table, reviewing documents with intense focus. He looked impossibly poised, dressed in a tailored suit, radiating confidence and authority, the very embodiment of a successful CEO. Her heart skipped. This was not what she had expected. "Miss Verma?" A polite voice interrupted her thoughts. She looked up to see a waiter gesturing to the table. "Yes," she said, steadying herself. "That's me." The man looked up from his papers, and for a moment, Sonia felt as if she had stepped into a different world. His eyes were sharp, dark, and discerning, yet there was a warmth beneath the intensity, a subtle curiosity that made her suddenly self-conscious. "You're early," he said, his voice smooth and controlled, though not unkind. "Yes," Sonia replied, forcing a smile. "I had some time to spare." She hesitated, realizing she needed to maintain the ruse. "Ria had a last-minute emergency. She asked me to come in her place. I hope that's acceptable." The man's eyebrows arched slightly, but he didn't display any irritation. Instead, he closed his folder and leaned back, studying her with quiet interest. "I see," he said slowly. "Well, I suppose life is full of surprises. Please, sit." Sonia did, her pulse racing. She had expected awkwardness, small talk, or even polite dismissal. Instead, he greeted her with calm attention, his manner professional but not distant, and something in the way he observed her made her feel simultaneously exposed and seen. The initial conversation was cautious. They exchanged pleasantries, discussed the city, and she answered questions about her work in marketing with careful honesty, always keeping in mind that she was filling in for someone else. But she realized that pretending to be Ria was more than just a name swap. It was an exercise in confidence, poise, and improvisation. And then came the first moment that made her heart flutter. "So," he said, leaning forward slightly, "you stepped in for a friend. That's unusual. Most people would cancel, avoid confrontation, or at least make excuses. Why did you agree?" Sonia's mind raced. She wanted to answer honestly, but she also wanted to maintain the impression of someone poised and self-assured. "I believe in helping friends," she said carefully. "And sometimes, taking a chance on something unexpected can lead to interesting experiences." He studied her, his eyes thoughtful. "Interesting experiences," he repeated. "I like that philosophy. It suggests someone willing to embrace life rather than avoid it. That's rare." Sonia's cheeks warmed. There was something in his tone, honest, genuine, intrigued, that made her forget for a moment that she was pretending to be someone else. She realized she was speaking more freely than she intended, drawn into a conversation that felt effortless and natural. They spoke about work, ambitions, and even light-hearted memories from their childhoods. Sonia was surprised at how easily the conversation flowed, how his questions were thoughtful, not superficial, and how he listened, not just waited for his turn to speak. Despite herself, she felt a connection forming, subtle but undeniable. Then came the unexpected moment that made her stumble. "So," he said, smiling faintly, "what would you do if you had a day entirely to yourself? No obligations, no expectations." Sonia blinked. She had never been asked that before, not in a blind date or otherwise. Most people assumed she had obligations, deadlines, or responsibilities. But the question invited honesty, vulnerability even. "I think I'd explore the city," she admitted softly. "I'd wander through streets I've never seen, try food I've never tasted, maybe sit in a cafe and just watch people." He nodded thoughtfully. "A keen observer then. That's valuable. Most people rush through life without noticing the details, the little things that truly matter." Sonia laughed lightly, realizing how easily she was revealing herself. "I guess I've always paid attention to details. Life teaches you that. Sometimes it's the only way to survive or understand the world around you." He leaned back, regarding her with a mixture of amusement and intrigue. "You surprise me. I expected a superficial conversation, but this is thoughtful. Rarely do I meet someone capable of being both genuine and insightful." The compliment caught her off guard. She felt a mixture of pride and nervousness. Was it possible that he was actually intrigued by her, not the persona she was pretending to be? Before she could dwell on it, the waiter arrived with their meals, and the conversation shifted to lighter topics: food, travel, and shared interests. Yet beneath the laughter, Sonia sensed an undercurrent of curiosity from him, a subtle intensity in the way he watched her, listened, and responded. As the afternoon wore on, Sonia realized something remarkable. Despite pretending to be Ria, she was being herself in a way she hadn't anticipated. The blind date, originally a favor, had become an experience that challenged her, delighted her, and even unsettled her. By the time the check arrived, she was acutely aware of the fleeting nature of this encounter. She had captured his attention, yes, but how long would it last? Was he impressed by her quick thinking, her charm, or the authentic Sonia he had glimpsed despite the ruse? He stood as they left the restaurant, placing a gentle hand at the small of her back. "I enjoyed this," he said quietly, his tone low, measured, and strangely intimate. "Most people are predictable. You are not." Sonia felt her pulse quicken. "I enjoyed it too," she admitted, her voice slightly breathless. "It was unexpected. Life is full of unexpected encounters," he said, his eyes locking with hers. "Some linger in memory, some change the course of things. I have a feeling this one might be the latter." Her heart skipped. She laughed nervously, unsure whether to take it as a flirtation, a joke, or something deeper. She didn't have time to analyze. He was already walking away, leaving her standing in the bustling street, the city alive around her, and her mind racing. For the first time in her life, Sonia realized that one spontaneous act, filling in for a friend, could lead to something profoundly transformative. Something that might change not just her afternoon, but the trajectory of her life. And somewhere deep inside she felt a fluttering certainty she had captured the CEO's attention. And perhaps, just perhaps, he had captured hers as well. Sonia didn't realize how deeply the blind date had affected her until she was halfway home, sitting in the back of an auto rickshaw, staring out at the blur of city lights. Her phone buzzed repeatedly, messages from Ria, anxious and apologetic, but Sonia barely noticed. Her thoughts kept drifting back to the man at the restaurant, his calm authority, the way he listened without interrupting, and the intensity in his gaze that made her feel like she was the only person in the room. She had gone there as a favor. She had left with questions. By the time she reached her apartment, her heart still hadn't slowed. She kicked off her shoes, dropped her bag on the chair, and leaned against the door, exhaling deeply. "Get a grip, Sonia," she muttered to herself. It was just one lunch, but deep down she knew it wasn't. The next morning, reality came crashing in with a sharp reminder. She had lied. Not maliciously, but still, a lie. He thought she was Ria. He didn't know her real name, her real life, or the truth behind her presence at that table. And yet he had seen her, her thoughts, her opinions, her way of looking at the world. That scared her. At work, Sonia tried to lose herself in campaigns, presentations, and deadlines. She worked at a modest marketing firm, far removed from the world of billion-dollar boardrooms and CEOs. Normally, she took pride in her independence, her quiet competence. But that day, nothing held her focus. Then her phone buzzed, an unknown number. She hesitated before answering. "Hello?" "Good morning," came a familiar, steady voice. "I hope I'm not disturbing you." Her breath caught. "No, not at all. I'm glad," he said. "I was hoping to continue our conversation from yesterday. Lunch was refreshing." Sonia closed her eyes briefly. "Yes, it was. I'd like to see you again," he continued, direct but polite. "No pressure, just a conversation. Perhaps dinner this time." Her fingers tightened around the phone. This was the moment she had dreaded and secretly anticipated. She had to tell him the truth, but the words stuck in her throat. She began, then stopped. "I'd like that." The relief in his voice was subtle but unmistakable. "Excellent. I'll have my assistant send you the details." When the call ended, Sonia sat frozen at her desk, her mind racing. She had just agreed to another meeting. Another lie layered onto the first. Guilt twisted in her chest, but so did something else, excitement. That evening she called Ria. "You're enjoying this too much," Ria accused after hearing the story. "Do you even realize who he is?" "I know exactly who he is," Sonia snapped, more sharply than she intended. "That's the problem," Ria sighed. "Sonia, if you're going to see him again, you have to tell him." "I will," Sonia said quietly. Soon, but soon felt terrifying. Dinner was at a private rooftop restaurant overlooking the city skyline. When Sonia arrived, she felt painfully aware of her simple dress, her modest jewelry, her ordinary life. Yet when he saw her, his expression softened, not with judgment, but appreciation. "You look lovely," he said. "Thank you," she replied, her voice barrel above a whisper. Dinner unfolded effortlessly. They talked about books, travel, leadership, and personal values. He spoke about the pressures of being a CEO, the isolation, the constant expectations, the lack of genuine connection. For the first time, Sonia saw past the title and into the man beneath it. "People see the position," he admitted, swirling his glass thoughtfully. "Very few see the person." She nodded slowly. "I understand that more than you think." Something in her tone made him look at her more closely. "You speak as if you've lived several lives," he said. "Yet there's a simplicity about you that feels grounding." Her heart ached. If only he knew. As the evening progressed, the atmosphere shifted, less formal, more personal. Laughter came easily. Silences felt comfortable. When he looked at her, it wasn't with curiosity anymore, but something deeper. Interest, respect, attraction. After dinner they walked along the terrace, the city lights glittering below. "You know," he said quietly, "I've met many accomplished women, intelligent, polished, impressive. But you feel real, honest." The irony nearly broke her. She stopped walking. "There's something I need to tell you," she said, her voice trembling. He turned toward her, concern flickering across his face. "What is it?" Her mouth opened and closed. Fear won. Never mind," she said softly. "It's not the right moment." He studied her for a long moment, then nodded. When you're ready. That night, Sonia barely slept. Her conscience warred with her heart. Every message he sent made her smile and hurt. She was falling for a man who didn't know the truth, and worse, she knew he valued honesty above all else. Days turned into weeks. They met again and again. Each meeting deepened the connection. He admired her ideas, sought her opinions, listened when she spoke. He never talked down to her, never flaunted his wealth or power. Around him, Sonia felt seen in a way she never had before, and that made the secret heavier. One afternoon during coffee, he casually mentioned Ria's aunt, the same woman who had arranged the blind date. Sonia froze. She's been asking when I'll make things official, he said with a faint smile. I told her I'm taking my time, that I want to know you, not the version everyone expects. The guilt was unbearable now. That night, Sonia stood in front of her mirror, staring at her reflection. I can't do this anymore, she whispered. She messaged him, we need to talk, really talk. His reply was immediate. Tomorrow. My office. 6 p.m. the next evening, Sonia stood outside the towering building, her hands shaking. The truth she was about to reveal could cost her everything. His respect, his trust, his affection. But she knew one thing with absolute clarity now. Capturing the CEO's heart meant nothing if it was built on a lie. She took a deep breath and stepped inside. The elevator ride to the top floor felt longer than it ever had. Sonia stood alone inside the mirrored space, watching her own reflection tremble slightly as the numbers climbed. Her heart pounded so loudly she was certain it could be heard. Every instinct screamed at her to turn back, to delay the truth just a little longer, but she knew there was no escaping this moment. Some lies grew heavier with time. This one had become unbearable. When the doors opened, the quiet elegance of the executive floor greeted her. Soft lighting, minimalist decor, power disguised as calm. His assistant nodded and gestured toward the CEO's office. He's expecting you, she said gently. Sonia stepped forward, each footfall echoing her resolve. Inside, he was standing by the window, city lights stretching endlessly behind him. He turned when he heard the door close, his expression unreadable, calm, attente, but alert. You sounded serious in your message, he said. Is everything all right? Sonia swallowed hard. No, but it will be, once I tell you the truth. He gestured to the seating area. Sit. Take your time. She remained standing. If I sit, she said softly, I might lose my courage. That made him still. All right, he said quietly. I'm listening. Sonia took a deep breath, grounding herself. The day we met, I wasn't supposed to be there. He frowned slightly. What do you mean? I wasn't the woman your blind date was arranged for, she continued, voice shaking but steadying with each word. Ria, my friend, was. She couldn't come. She begged me to fill in so her aunt wouldn't be offended. I agreed, thinking it would be harmless. I never expected. Her voice cracked. This silence filled the room. He didn't move, didn't speak. I never intended to deceive you, she rushed on. I planned to tell you immediately. But then we talked, and you listened, and you saw me, not her, and I panicked. I kept waiting for the right moment, and every time I did, it felt like I had more to lose. Finally, he spoke. What is your real name? He asked quietly. Sonia Verma. He repeated it slowly. Sonia. She nodded. Everything else I told you was true. My work, my values, my thoughts, just not my identity. He turned away, walking back toward the window. For a long moment, Sonia thought she might break. I value honesty above everything, he said at last. His voice wasn't angry, but it was distant, controlled. You know that? Yes, she whispered. That's why I had to tell you now. You let me believe something false, he continued. You let me build trust on it. Tears welled in her eyes. I know. And if you never want to see me again, I'll understand. I just couldn't let this continue without the truth." He turned back to her and surprised her completely. "I'm not anger." "Why?" he said. She looked up, startled. "I'm disappointed," he clarified. "But I also understand something else." "What?" she asked softly. "You didn't pretend to be someone better," he said slowly. "You pretended to be someone else, and still showed me yourself. That's complicated." Her breath hitched. "You should have told me sooner," he continued. "But what you shared, your thoughts, your insights, the way you see the world, that wasn't a lie." She nodded, tears slipping free now. "I never wanted to manipulate you. I just didn't want to lose what we were building." He studied her closely, searching her face. "You know," he said finally, "most people want me for my position, my influence, my wealth. You didn't even know who I was when you sat down that day." She laughed softly through tears. "I was terrified." That earned a faint smile. "Good," he said. "That means you were real." Relief washed through her, but it wasn't complete. "I won't excuse the deception," he added. "Trust matters, and rebuilding it takes time." "I'm willing to give it," Sonia said immediately. "Whatever it takes," he nodded. "Then let's do this properly. No lies, no assumptions." She held his gaze, agreed. The weeks that followed were different, slower, more careful. They didn't meet as often. Conversations were deeper, sometimes uncomfortable. He asked questions, not accusatory but honest, about her background, her life, her struggles. She answered every one. Sonia told him about her modest upbringing, her parents' sacrifices, her career ambitions, and the quiet strength she had developed from being overlooked most of her life. He listened, truly listened, and something shifted. One evening, after a long conversation about leadership and integrity, he said something that stayed with her. "You challenge me," he admitted. "Not intellectually, but emotionally. You make me question my assumptions." She smiled faintly. "You do the same." He laughed softly. "Then this is dangerous, or meaningful," she countered. He looked at her with something new in his eyes, not curiosity, not attraction, but respect. Yet the world outside their connection wasn't as forgiving. Whispers began. Colleagues noticed his distraction. Family members questioned his choices. Friends warned him about complications. "You don't mix personal feelings with unpredictability," one advisor said bluntly, "especially not when your reputation is involved." He didn't respond, but the pressure mounted. One night, after a tense day, he finally said it. "This won't be easy," he admitted. "Being with me means scrutiny, judgment, expectations you didn't ask for." Sonia met his gaze calmly. "I've lived under judgment my whole life. I'm not afraid of it." He studied her for a long moment. "That," he said quietly, "is exactly why I'm afraid for you." She reached for his hand, hesitant, respectful. "I didn't step into your world by accident," she said. "I stepped in because I chose honesty eventually, and I'm choosing you with open eyes." The room was silent. Then he squeezed her hand. "Then I choose you too," he said. But neither of them knew yet how much that choice would cost. Because love, once it entered the CEO's carefully controlled world, was about to test everything. His reputation, his courage, and his heart. Love had entered his life quietly, without announcement or permission, and the world noticed. The change in him was subtle at first. Longer pauses in meetings, a softer tone during calls, moments of distraction that had never existed before. Those closest to him sensed it immediately. A man who had built his empire on precision and control was suddenly human, and that made people uncomfortable. The board noticed first. During a quarterly review, one of the senior directors cleared his throat and said casually, "You seem preoccupied lately." He met the man's gaze calmly. "I'm evolving." The room went silent. Evolving was not a word often associated with him. Then came the family at a formal dinner. His aunt, the same woman who had arranged the blind date, smiled knowingly as she studied Sonia's absence. "So," she said, swirling her wine, "have you decided whether Ria is suitable long-term?" He set his glass down deliberately. "Ria is not the woman I'm seeing." Her smile froze. "Oh, Sonia Verma is..." The reaction was immediate: confusion, disapproval, thinly veiled concern. "And who is she?" his cousin asked. "She's someone who challenges me," he replied evenly. "Someone I respect." His aunt leaned forward. "Respect is not enough. You need compatibility, background, stability. She has all of those," he said calmly, "just not the kind you're used to measuring." The conversation ended stiffly, but the message was clear. Resistance had begun. Sonia felt it too. Invitations were suddenly lost. Smiles felt forced. Conversations stopped when she entered rooms. She was polite, composed, but she noticed everything. She always had. One evening, after a particularly uncomfortable event, she finally spoke. "I don't want to be a source of conflict," she said quietly. "Your world doesn't need to adjust for me." He turned to her sharply. "My world doesn't define me, but it defines how people see you," she replied gently, "and how they see me." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I knew this wouldn't be easy. I just didn't expect it to be this relentless." She took his hand. "Then let me ask you something honestly. Anything. Are you prepared to choose me even if the world disapproves?" He didn't answer immediately, and that pause frightened her more than any rejection could have. Over the following weeks, pressure mounted. Articles hinted at distract. Ions in leadership. Advisors suggested distance. His mother expressed concern about optics. One night, after a particularly heated discussion with the board, he returned home exhausted. "She doesn't belong in this life," one director had said bluntly, "and if you're honest, you know it." He found Sonia in the living room, reading quietly. "You're quiet," she observed. "I'm tired," he admitted, "of explaining something that feels so obvious." She closed her book. "Then don't explain. Decide." He looked at her sharply. "Decide what kind of man you want to be," she continued. "One who lives by expectations, or one who lives by truth." Silence fell between them. "You don't owe me anything," she added softly. "I stepped into this knowing the risks, but I won't beg to stay." Something in her voice, calm, self-respecting, unafraid, made something snap inside him. He had spent his life making calculated decisions. This one would be different. The next morning he called an emergency board meeting. They gathered, tense and alert. "I've heard the concerns," he said calmly. "About focus, about perception, about my personal life." Several heads nodded. "Let me be clear," he continued. "My relationship does not weaken my leadership. It strengthens it. And if any of you believe that my choice of partner undermines this company, then perhaps your understanding of leadership is the issue." Silence. "I will not step back," he finished, "and I will not hide." Word spread fast. Public reaction followed. Some criticized, others admired, and Sonia watched it all unfold with quiet strength. "I never asked you to fight for me," she said one evening. "I'm not fighting for you," he replied. "I'm standing for myself." The turning point came at a high-profile charity gala. Sonia hesitated before attending. "Are you sure?" He offered his arm. "I want the world to see you, not the version they imag. Ein, the real one." The room fell silent when they entered together. Eyes turned. Whispers followed, but Sonia walked with her head high, grace in every step. And then something unexpected happened. A woman approached, an influential investor. "I've been wanting to meet you," she said to Sonia warmly. "Anyone who makes him challenge himself must be extraordinary." The ice began to crack. Conversation followed. Laughter. Curiosity replacing judgment. By the end of the night, Sonia realized something profound. The world pushes back hardest when you challenge its assumptions. And love, real love, was not about comfort. It was about courage. But the final test was still to come, because standing beside him publicly was one thing. Standing beside him forever would require a decision neither of them had yet voiced aloud. The morning sunlight streamed through the tall glass windows of the penthouse, casting long shadows across the floor. Sonia stood near the balcony, watching the city wake up. Cars moving like veins of light, people rushing toward destinations filled with purpose, pressure, and possibility. She had learned something important over the past few months. Love did not arrive gently. It arrived like truth, unavoidable, demanding, and transformative. Behind her, he stood quietly, watching her the way he always did when she thought he wasn't looking. Not as a CEO evaluating risk, not as a powerful man calculating outcomes, but as someone who had found something rare and was afraid to lose it. "You're thinking again," he said softly. She smiled faintly. "I do that." "I know," he replied. "It's one of the reasons I fell for you." She turned to face him. "That's what scares me." He frowned slightly. "Why?" "Because falling is easy," she said. "Standing up afterward, that's what costs something." He understood immediately. The past weeks had been relentless. Media speculation, boardroom tension, family pressure. Every step he took with Sonia beside him felt like a statement, one scrutinized, questioned, and judged. And today would be the loudest statement of all. The annual leadership summit. Every executive, every investor, press, cameras, and a decision. He walked toward her slowly. "I didn't bring you into my world to ask you to disappear when it became difficult." "I know," she said, "but I won't be the reason you lose everything you've built." He shook his head firmly. "You are the reason I finally understand why I built it." The summit hall buzzed with anticipation. Whispers traveled faster than footsteps. Everyone knew something was coming. No one knew what. When he walked onto the stage, the room fell silent. He stood tall, composed, familiar. But then, Sonia stepped forward and joined him. The gasp was audible. He reached for her hand, not as a gesture of defiance, but of certainty. "Before we begin," he said into the microphone, his voice calm but resonant, "there's something I need to address." The room leaned in. "For years, I've been praised for discipline, logic, and control," he continued. "And those qualities built this company. But leadership is not just about control, it's about courage." Eyes flicked to Sonia. "I was warned that choosing love would weaken me," he said. "That choosing a woman who didn't fit the expected narrative would damage credibility." He paused. "They were wrong." A ripple moved through the crowd. "This woman," he said, turning to Sonia, "walked into my life by accident. She stayed by choice. She challenged my assumptions, demanded honesty, and never once asked for comfort over truth." Sonia's breath caught. "I will not apologize for choosing her," he said firmly, "because leadership that requires denying humanity is not leadership. It's fear, silence, then applause, not polite. Real, later, away from the noise." Sonia stood alone, overwhelmed. "You didn't have to do that," she whispered. He took her hands. "I needed to." Her eyes glistened. "You chose me. I choose you," he corrected. "Every day." She looked at him then. Not as a CEO, not as a powerful man, but as someone who had risked everything to stand in truth. "And what if the cost gets higher?" she asked. He smiled softly. "Then we pay it together." Months later, the world looked different. Not perfect, but honest. Some doors had closed, others had opened wider than ever. And on a quiet evening, far from cameras and expectations, he stood before her again, this time without an audience. "I didn't plan to fall in love," he said, holding a small velvet box, "but I refuse to plan a future without you." Sonia laughed through tears. "You really don't do things halfway, do you?" "Never," he replied. "Not when it matters." She didn't hesitate. Yes, she said, but only if we promise one thing, anything. No pretending, she said. No hiding. No becoming smaller to fit a world that doesn't understand us. He slipped the ring onto her finger. I fell in love with the woman who spoke her truth. I would never ask her to silence it. As they stood there, city lights glowing around them, Sonia realized something profound. She hadn't captured the CEO's heart by pretending to be someone else. She had captured it the moment she chose honesty over fear. And love, real love, was not about fitting into someone's world. It was about building a new one together. More stories will keep coming, so please don't forget to like and subscribe.